Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Mark Medley Show. And today's episode is titled, Be Grateful for What You Have. And yes, this is another show to encourage us and remind us to be thankful and grateful for whatever it is that we do have, because there's always someone else who is worse off than we are. There's always someone else in a worse predicament or a situation than we are in. On Saturday morning on my radio show, The Reading Circle with Mark Medley, I was explaining to the listening audience my first 7 days of 2018 No Complaint Challenge. And I was explaining to them a story. I was trying to find it and I couldn't find the story on Google. And then as I searched whenever I got home, oddly enough, I wound up finding it on YouTube. I tell you, technology is a wonderful thing. YouTube and Google and iPhones and Apple and all those things weren't around whenever I was a child. But over the years, I saw each one of those things introduced. The various technologies. It went from 45s, 33s, cassette tapes, 8-track tapes, CDs and MP3s and digital, and on and on and on as I watched the various technologies progress. So oddly enough, the story I was looking for when I was keywording it on Google, because again, whenever I was a child, there was no Google, there was the encyclopedia or the dictionary. But now we have this wonderful technology called the internet and search engines such as Google, where you can keyword things and ultimately you'll find what you're looking for. Well, that such was the case over the weekend whenever I came home to find the story that I was looking for to illustrate that whatever it is that we're complaining about, somebody else has it worse, and maybe looking at what we have as something they wish they had. So I came across this little story of the same title that I titled this episode, which is Be Grateful for What You Have. And it's a video. I encourage you to go to YouTube, put that in, and watch the little cartoon video, because it is moving and it is touching and it illustrates the point. There's a young man, as the video opens, and it's a cartoon video. He's driving what looks like a Ferrari or a Maserati or one of these high-end sports cars. And he's looking up in the air at a helicopter saying, I'd love to have a helicopter. Now that's what's going through his mind as he's driving this Ferrari or this Maserati or this Maybach or whatever it is that this high-end performance car is that he's driving. He's sitting there wishing for a helicopter. And then right next to him, someone driving a sports car that looks like a BMW or an Acura or an Infiniti pulls up next to the Ferrari. And in his mind, he says, that's my dream car. And then right next to him, next to the BMW or the Acura or the Mercedes or the Infiniti, pulls up with somebody in a regular car, looks like a Ford or perhaps a Kia like I drive, or a regular Toyota or a Honda. And in their mind, he's saying, or in his mind, he's saying, I want that off-road car. So follow the progression. The gentleman in the Ferrari is saying, I'd love to have a helicopter. The gentleman in the BMW is looking at the Ferrari saying, that's my dream car. The gentleman in the Ford is saying, I want that off-road car. And then the person pulls up to the person in the newer Ford or the newer Kia or the newer Toyota or the newer Honda in his hoopty and says, look at that new car. And then what pulls up besides the hoopty is a person on a bicycle, riding a bicycle saying, if only I could afford a car. And then the person on the bicycle, you see the next shot of someone standing in a bus stop, or someone who probably has to walk wherever they go or catch the bus saying, I wish I had a bike. And then the camera moves to someone sitting on a balcony in a wheelchair saying, he can go wherever he wants. And then it closes out with the closing shot saying, be grateful for what you have. Now that's something to think about. The person driving the Ferrari or the Maybach or the Maserati or that really high-end performance car is sitting there looking up at the helicopter saying, I'd love to have a helicopter. The person in the BMW, which is also in its own right a high-performing car, is looking at the Ferrari and saying, that's my dream car. The person in the Ford is looking at that BMW saying, I want that off-road car. The person in the Hoopty is looking at the person in the Ford or the newer vehicle saying, look at that new car. And then the person on the bike pulls up next to the Hoopty and said, if only I could afford a car. And the person standing at the bus stop is looking at the person going by on the bicycle saying, I wish I had a bike. And then the person in the wheelchair is looking down upon the person waiting at the bus stop saying, he can go wherever he wants. Wow, you talk about a powerful video to illustrate how we need to be grateful for whatever it is that we have. And the truth of the matter is, what we have at this minute could be lost the next minute. A very good friend of mine who's a member of the church that I attend, I saw him on Sunday morning. His house caught on fire Sunday night or Monday morning early. He's now hospitalized. Life is now changed for him. You look out in California with the fires, and as fine as those homes are, they're being obliterated by the fires. If you look at the storms that came through this past year in Houston, Texas, in Puerto Rico, the earthquake in Mexico, if you look at these natural disasters, just how quickly what took years to build takes literally nanoseconds to tear down. It ought to cause us to be grateful and thankful for what we have. I attended a funeral of a colleague on Sunday, yesterday, or 2 days ago. And this colleague went to work up until the Christmas break and passed away on Christmas Day. And then when I returned to school after an extended break because of weather, I learned that a first grader in another school had passed away. And then I learned the same day that a high schooler had passed away. And on that same day, I had a student that was sent to my office because she was threatening or talking about the possibility of suicide. Folks, we have got to become grateful and thankful for what we have, because I share the young lady that was talking about suicide with you because the three people that I just mentioned, that first grader, that high schooler, and the colleague, I would almost bet if they had an opportunity to trade places with the young lady that's still alive, they would. Just like any of the people that was in the little story that I shared with you that were looking to trade up, if you will. Let us be thankful for what we have. And guess what? The more thankful and grateful you are, the more that you will receive, the more that will be given to you. The more things you will have to be grateful for. Because the Bible says, those who are faithful over a few things, over small things, will at some point be awarded greater things. So the more thankful that you are, the more things that you'll have to be thankful for. And the more that you're constantly complaining, the more things you're going to lose. That's kind of the way karma works. The more negative energy you put out there is the more negative energy that you're going to receive. The more positive energy that you put out there, the more positive energy that you're going to receive. Now, it's not perfect. It's not always going to be the positive energy that you need every time you need it. But for the most part, when you need it, it's going to be there because you put it out to begin with. Compared with the negativity that you put out there, is going to constantly be making its way back to you, and it's going to be a vicious cycle, and you're going to always be wondering, why do these things always happen to me? You're always going to be crying, woe is me. So let us be grateful for what we have. I don't know about you, but if I had that Ferrari, I wouldn't be worried about no helicopter. And if I had the BMW, I don't think I'd be worrying about the Ferrari. In fact, I drive a Kia, and I'm not worrying about the Acura and the Mercedes and the BMWs, because for me, a car goes from point A to point B. I just need to be able to get where I want to go, and I'm not out there trying to impress anybody. So I don't think I would be worried too much about having the BMW. I would probably fall in, and even though it's a newer hoopty, it's a newer one, but to somebody who's walking or to someone who's on the bike, I'll bet you they would be glad to get on or to have the hoopty. And certainly someone who's waiting for a bus or have to walk everywhere that they go, I'm sure they would be happy for the bicycle. And then the young man in the wheelchair, because he's saying, gee, he's down there walking and waiting on a bus. He can go where he wants. So I encourage you to go to the YouTube video. You can see it for yourself. There's no talking. It's just music and the words come up and you read it. But it says, be grateful for what you have. Thank you. I am so grateful and have so much gratitude that you even listen to the podcast. You can catch it on all the major podcast distribution sites, whether it's Apple Podcasts, which is also iTunes, whether it's iHeartRadio, on YouTube itself, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, on Spreaker itself where I record it. It's on all those major sites. And then you can catch me live on Saturday mornings from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. Drive time on Saturday mornings as I web stream around the world on gobrave.org, GOBRAVE.org, and locally in the northern New Jersey area on 88.7 FM radio. You can follow me on all the social media sites, on Twitter at Reading Circle 01. That's the same thing on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter. I'm on all of them. You can find me there. But thank you so much for listening. And do remember, be grateful for what you have. In all things, give thanks.